As of the making of this video, the DCU is still in its pre-production stage. Nothing, not even a trailer for anything, has come out yet, and the information we know about each of the as of now confirmed 13 projects is relatively limited, especially for those that are a bit further out. There are around 50 characters who have been confirmed for this universe, but not only do we not know where some of them are appearing, and whether or not the characters who have been confirmed to appear in a certain project will also appear elsewhere, but also each project will certainly have many more characters brought in from the DC universe to be a part of the cast. In this video, that's what I'll be looking at, predicting every character who can appear in each project based on what we know, while also being realistic as possible, because obviously we can't have Batman appearing in literally every single project, even though that would be comic accurate. So make sure to leave a like and subscribe for more DCU content and help me get to 100,000 subscribers. And let's begin with the first DCU project, Creature Commandos. Since Creature Commandos is closest to release, we know a little bit more about it compared to most other projects, including who's appearing. The confirmed characters as of this video are Rick Flag Sr., Nina Mazursky, Dr. Phosphorus, Eric Frankenstein, the Bride of Frankenstein, G.I. Robot, an original character named Princess Ilana Rostovic, Cersei, and a few returning characters from the DCEU, Weasel, Amanda Waller, and John Economos. Speaking of those returning characters, Creature Commandos does connect to a lot of other projects like the Suicide Squad, Peacemaker Season 1 and 2, since Rick Flag Sr. is confirmed to be appearing throughout Season 2, as well as Waller. Basically every single character from every single one of those projects can potentially appear in Creature Commandos because they aren't limited by having to bring back an actor. It's animated, so they can bring back anyone, and like I said, they are already bringing back Weasel, Amanda Waller, and John Economos. And so I think it's fair to assume that a lot of the characters from these shows will be appearing in Creature Commandos. However, I'm not going to be considering any of the Suicide Squad characters because I think the ones who are alive and are not returning for this show will probably have a return, if they ever do, in a bigger capacity, something that is more significant. So most of the Peacemaker characters I think will appear in the show, the Suicide Squad characters not necessarily. Now, Creature Commandos will actually be a big departure from the comics, only like one of the members was a significant member in the comics, and in the comics the Creature Commandos were a World War II based monster team. Here they're going to be a Suicide Squad made out of monsters, so maybe because of the focus on a modern reworking of the Creature Commandos, maybe it will actually canonically be a revival of an actual World War II based team, which was made up of the classic lineup aside from Frankenstein, who will be in the show, including Matthew Shreve, Wolfpack, Vincent Velcoro, and Medusa, who could potentially appear in flashback. I think it'd be cool if, on this show, maybe in some flashbacks, we could potentially see some of the villains being apprehended by their comic book enemies. For instance, Cersei is a very prominent Wonder Woman villain, and honestly this might actually happen, since James Gunn said he'll put Wonder Woman into more animation, and beyond that, Wonder Woman has not been confirmed for a single other project, not even the one that focuses on her part of the world, Paradise Lost, since it takes place before her birth. So maybe they're waiting for this show to come out, and that's where Wonder Woman will debut before they announce where else she will appear. Now they would probably have to cast Wonder Woman even if she doesn't have lines, since the character would have to be modeled after the actress, but even if they haven't cast her yet, then she could potentially appear in silhouette. Maybe also another character could appear in silhouette, one that fits a silhouette more, and that is Batman, who could be seen maybe even from the perspective of the villain apprehending Dr. Phosphorus, a member of his rogues gallery. And finally is a character who hasn't been confirmed for this universe, but Weasel is actually a Firestorm villain and is connected in his origin to Martin Stein. So hey, who knows, maybe Firestorm, or at the very least Martin Stein, will appear in the DCU, and maybe it will be here for the first time if we could see Weasel's backstory. And alongside Weasel, maybe other characters will have their backstory revealed in this show. For instance, Nina Mazursky's father, Myron Mazursky, could appear, Eric's creator, Dr. Frankenstein, G.I. Robot's creator, Robert Crane, and Dr. Phosphorus' daughter, Princess Tinderbox, although that last one is a lot less likely, so I'm not going to be putting it in this final graphic, where you could see my prediction for the full cast for Creature Commandos, in terms of characters who are from the comics, plus Ilana Rostovic, who was already confirmed. The characters confirmed for Superman include the likes of Superman, Lois Lane, Jimmy Olsen, Lex Luthor, Eve Tessmacher, Otis, Supergirl, Hawkgirl, Green Lantern, Mr. Terrific, Metamorpho, the Engineer, Perry White, Jonathan Kent, Martha Kent, Crypto, and this guy who is probably Solaris, as well as potentially Maxwell Lord. To start, I think it's a bit weird that the only member of the Authority that's been confirmed for this as of now is the Engineer, and I really don't think she'll be the only one to appear. The other 6 primary members of the Authority are the Doctor, Jack Hawksmoor, Jenny Sparks, Midnighter, Apollo, and Swift. And out of these members, it is the Doctor and Jack Hawksmoor who have shown up the most in scoops and rumors. Apollo and Midnighter will absolutely appear in the Authority, but not necessarily in Superman, just because they are the most popular characters of the team, so they will certainly appear. While both Jenny Sparks and Swift I could see being entirely replaced by Manchester Black and Hawkgirl, respectively. The latter is actually confirmed to appear, while the former might just. As a final prediction, I'm just going off of the scoops and saying that Engineer Hawksmoor and the Doctor are the three members of the Authority from the comics who will be appearing in Superman, before the rest appear in the Authority movie, which we will obviously get back to later. Speaking of Hawkgirl, there are the 4 other DC heroes who are appearing, from which there might be closely related characters who might appear as well. But honestly, with this being a Superman movie and all, I doubt those characters will be truly fleshed out in their own supporting casts, so honestly, I'd rather just not look at that possibility at all, and say that those characters will be fleshed out in a spin-off like maybe the Terrifics or maybe Lanterns. Beyond that, this is obviously a Superman movie, and while a lot of Superman supporting cast has been confirmed, there are others who haven't been, who I think should appear. For instance, Jor-El in hologram form, some Daily Planet employees like Kat Grant, Ron Troop, and Steve Lombard, some other Metropolitans like Bebo Babowski, Maggie Sawyer, Dan Turpin, and Emil Hamilton, as well as a key member of Lex's gang to go alongside Eve and Otis, Mercy Graves. Although actually maybe that's a character they could introduce later on in the universe to replace Eve and Otis. Finally are the villains, and while practically anyone is fair game, I'll be limiting myself to those who were hinted at one point by James Gunn, or appeared in the loose canon DCEU projects. This does leave us with a relatively long list that includes Bloodsport, Mongal, and by extension Mongul, Ultra Humanite, Titano, Brainiac, Parasite, Silver Banshee, Lady Blaze, Metallo, and Bizarro. Now, some of these hints are stronger than others, some of these characters' presence in the movie would change the movie and just wouldn't fit, and some of these characters are maybe a bit too big to appear in a movie where they aren't the main villain, barring just a cameo. With that in mind, with the confirmation that Lex Luthor is the main villain, and it could be assumed that Solaris is also a main villain, I'd also include Parasite, and maybe Metallo, as well as a Brainiac cameo to set him up for a sequel. With all that in mind, here's what the full list of characters for Superman would be in this scenario. The final project that, as of this video, has actually begun filming as far as we know, is Peacemaker Season 2. The characters who've been confirmed for the season include returning characters like Peacemaker, Eagly, Vigilante, Amelia Harcourt, John Economos, Leota Adebayo, Judo Master, and a new character, Rick Flag Sr. And just based on how Season 1 ended, Augie Smith will most likely appear in hallucination form. As for the characters who should appear, there's not too much to go off of aside from some tangential connections. Since Season 1 kind of just made everything up from scratch, going into that show, it would have been impossible to predict even a single character aside from Peacemaker and maybe a couple other characters who appeared in the Suicide Squad. However, one point of interest we could have looked into is the fact that Peacemaker is from Earth 4 and originated from Charlton Comics, not DC Comics, and so Judo Master appeared in Peacemaker, who is also from this same comics. So with that being said, it's possible that other Earth 4 characters will be appearing in Peacemaker as well. For instance, Ted Kord, and maybe by extension Jaime Reyes, who have been confirmed to return for the DCU, but it's unclear where. There is another show where it seems their inclusion would make more sense though, so for Peacemaker Season 2, I think that the other Charlton Comics characters who have not been confirmed to appear in the DCU should appear, like The Question, Nightshade, and maybe even Captain Atom, although because of how much budget Captain Atom could potentially take up, and because I think there is another show where it would make sense for him to debut, I'd stick to The Question and Nightshade. Nightshade's definitely the most likely, however, as The Question has the danger of maybe overshadowing Peacemaker. It's also possible, but less likely, that other Creature Commandos characters aside from Rick Flag Sr. will appear as well. I say less likely because the others would require some CGI or prosthetics, so would be more difficult to include than Flag. Also because Flag has a personal vendetta with Peacemaker, the others just are not relevant to that. So honestly, the other Creature Commandos characters I don't think will appear. Beyond that, the season can introduce other characters who are related to the show's characters in some way. Characters like the newly introduced female Peacemaker variant Peacewrecker, the female Judo Master Sonia Sato, and all the Vigilante related characters, of which there are a good amount. Vigilante on Peacemaker is a big deviation from the comics, however, even in his family, as he doesn't have a wife and kids, and his brother is named Gut instead of Dorian. Now, with the type of person Vigilante is on the show, I don't think he'll ever have a love interest or kids, nor do I think any of the other Vigilantes like Greg Sanders, Alan Wells, Dave Winston, or Donald Fairchild will appear, and I also don't think they'll introduce his parents, given how much Season 1 already focused on parents with Peacemaker's dad. What that leaves us with is Gut Chase, his brother, and a potential focus on brotherhood, which could work. Gut Chase would would then be an adaptation of Dorian Chase, so maybe he would be a vigilante in his own right. Then there are a few characters mentioned in Season 1 who never appeared. It'd be cool to see them in this season. Well, okay, Green Arrow would be cool, he was mentioned in Season 1, but that feels a bit unrealistic, as do Dollman and Matter Eater Lad, who are anachronistic references that don't really make sense. What I'm mainly talking about is Kite Man, who was said to have a past with Peacemaker, and you know what? Batman has a large enough rogues gallery. Peacemaker could take someone like Kite Man. He could also, well, not take, but borrow Batmite, who was mentioned in Season 1 and could potentially be used as the explanation for the universe change. Now yes, Batmite famously only cares about Batman, but maybe this version got bored of Batman for a minute or something. Okay, I'll be honest, I think there are other characters who could fit the universe change aspect of the season better, specifically one character who doesn't yet exist in either of these worlds as far as we know, the Psycho Pirate, who is the only person in the comics who retains memories of previous timelines after universe resets. Before that though, he could also be used as a standard supervillain who controls emotions. I would not be shocked if Psycho Pirate appears in Season 2. So that's just what we can predict. I think the season will have a lot of other characters that nobody could have seen coming, but just based off what we know, here's what the cast of characters I think would look like. For Waller, we'll have to be a bit more speculative because the only confirmed characters are Amanda Waller and John Economos, and what we know so far about the premise just does not give us enough to go off of. Off the bat, James Gunn mentioned at one point that the show will feature members of Team Peacemaker. Now, when he said that, Waller was supposed to act as Peacemaker Season 1.5 coming out between seasons, but that has changed, and now Waller will come out and take place after Peacemaker Season 2. But that could mean that Waller will just be Season 2.5 instead of 1.5, and so I think we could expect other Peacemaker characters, potentially all of the main ones, to appear. At the very least, definitely her daughter and daughter-in-law, and then the rest of Waller's family as well, which is pretty large in the comics, but I'd say Leota's father and brother, Joseph and Martin, would probably suffice. The show will also connect to the Suicide Squad and could potentially bring back some of Waller's staff like Dale Biner and Florence Crawley, and then the show will also connect to Creature Commandos and so could feature those characters in some capacity as well. Although, aside from Rick Flag Sr., I doubt it will due to the same budgetary concerns that were true for Peacemaker. From there, we have to consider the premise of the show, which we don't know much aside from Waller will be arrested for her role in Task Force X, which was exposed by her daughter during Peacemaker Season 1. What I'm predicting from there is that Waller will be similar to something like Kingpin in Daredevil Season 3, a ruthless genius who takes control of the prison she's in and builds up some sort of agency along the way. The agency I think she'll create and will go on to have an important role in the chapter is Checkmate, and therefore many Checkmate characters I think will appear, including two who have been already confirmed for the DCU, Mr. Terrific and Maxwell Lord. Beyond that, Checkmate has like 100 members, but some of the more significant ones are Mr. Bones, King Faraday, Mark Shaw, Sarge Steele, Jessica Midnight, Talib Beni Khalid, Sasha Bordeaux, and Valentina Vostok, all of whom I'm going to be including in my prediction. There are then a few characters from the source material, Suicide Squad, the Phoenix Gambit, who I could see making an appearance, like Deadshot, Bronze Tiger, Count Vertigo, and maybe even Batman can make his DCU appearance here, not Creature Commandos, before The Brave and the Bold. Out of these options, I'd include Count Vertigo since he could also be a member of Checkmate, and I'd take that opportunity to introduce Green Arrow to the DCU here as well. And finally, to round things off, there are several DC characters who can debut here just by virtue of being closely intertwined with the governmental side of the DC universe. A potentially pre-Captain Atom Nathaniel Adams could appear, Sam Lane, Steve Trevor, General Eiling, Deathstroke, and on the government conspiracy side of things, the Question could appear again. All of these characters are from several different corners of the DC universe, and that's exactly the point. I think Waller has the potential to explore and build out a lot of the universe through a governmental and realistic lens. So with that in mind, this is what the list of characters would look like. The only project aside from Superman to have a release date as of now is Supergirl Woman of Tomorrow. As of right now, only Supergirl has been confirmed for this movie. However, Ruthie Marie Knoll was practically confirmed by James Gunn and Crypto seems incredibly likely. What is unique about this movie is that it will be a direct adaptation of a specific story, and one that actually does not include too many named characters, and so it's entirely possible we already know every character who will appear. Aside from Supergirl, Ruthie, and Crypto, the characters from Woman of Tomorrow are Krem of the Yellow Hills, the Brigands Brigade, Comet the Superhorse, and Kara's parents appearing in flashback. That being said, I think some changes will be made. Firstly, I don't think Comet will appear and Crypto is likely to take his role somewhat. Secondly, I think the movie can be used as a good opportunity to introduce and fill out a bit of the cosmic side of the DC universe, even if it is just in cameos. Considering Lanterns takes place on Earth. They would all be cameos, like I said, but I think a few of the alien Green Lanterns could appear, like Kilowog and Tomare, and other space-based characters like Lobo, Adam Strange, and maybe even Brainiac, further setting him up for something down the line. Finally, I think Superman should have a cameo, either in the beginning, in the end, or in a flashback of some sort. So, Woman of Tomorrow does not have a large cast of characters, so the movie wouldn't either. It's the smallest one in the video. The characters confirmed for The Brave and the Bold are Batman and Damian Wayne, aka Robin, but it's also safe to assume that the other confirmed for the universe Bat family members, Nightwing and Cassandra Cain, will appear as well, and from there you could kind of fill in the gaps of the Bat family because Damian and Cassandra have predecessors like Tim Drake and Barbara Gordon. Jason Todd might still be dead, so he might not appear. Stephanie Brown might have just simply not debuted yet, with the same going for the likes of Batwoman, Batwing, The Signal, etc. The Bat family would debut as Batman, Nightwing, Robin, Oracle, and Batgirl, with Jason Todd being dead. Then Damian comes in, becomes the new Robin, and then maybe Tim changes his identity to something like Red Robin. From there, we need to bring in the classic cast of characters in any Batman story, like Alfred and James Gordon, and some other supporting characters to fill in the world, like Lucius Fox, Renee Montoya, Harvey Bullock, and Vicky Vale, even if some of those characters don't necessarily have to have large roles. I think The Brave and the Bold will probably have enough on its plate introducing as many characters as it is, so it should be self-contained to Gotham, with no other DC heroes appearing aside from maybe a Superman cameo, and so we'll end things off with the villains, of which Batman obviously has a ton, the biggest in comic book history, and so I had to narrow it down, and I did so to two categories, and the two things that I think the movie should focus on. First is Damian's backstory, meaning Ra's al Ghul, Talia al Ghul, and some other League of Assassins members like Sensei, Ubu, maybe even Merlin to connect a little bit to the other DCU characters. And then the second thing is the overlooked in live action fantastical side of the Batman Rogues Gallery, which the League of Assassins does play into a little bit. So I think the likes of Man-Bat, who had a large role in the source material, as well as his wife, and then also Killer Croc should appear in this movie. And so here's what the Brave and the Bold cast should look like. All things considered, Swamp Thing is pretty much just a blank slate of a movie right now, with the only confirmed characters being Alec Holland and Swamp Thing, and the only thing we know about it being that it will be a dark origin story. So we could probably add Swamp Thing's limited supporting cast, like Abby Arcane, Matthew Cable, his first wife Linda Holland, who would then die, and then some villains who are important to his origin or most important stories, Anton Arcane, Avery Sunderland, and Jason Woodrow, who would maybe then be set up to become the Floronic Man. I suspect that Swamp Thing will begin a Justice League dark side of the DCU as well, and because of that, it seems likely that at least one of them will appear, with Constantine being the most likely since he doesn't really require too much backstory explanation. Still, it probably would not be too large overall. And finally, I'd like for Swamp Thing to explore a bit of the concept of the green, and maybe through that other characters connected to it could appear. Characters like Black Orchid, who is actually a member of Justice League Dark, so maybe she should have a role in this movie, Poison Ivy, Blackbeard Thorn, Lady Jane, Juniper, Beldame, almost certainly not all of them, but at least a few of them, and especially Black Orchid. It is a smaller, more self-contained story, so Swamp Thing would have a smaller cast of characters. Despite the art used for the Authority movie showing the 7 original members, the only one officially confirmed ever for this universe as of now is the Engineer. But like I said earlier in this video, I think Midnighter, Apollo, Jack Hawksmoor, and the Doctor will most certainly appear as well, while Jenny Sparks and Swift are less clear. In the comics, Jenny Sparks is the spirit of the 20th century, while Jenny Quantum is the new spirit of the 21st century, which is the century that this movie will come out in and almost certainly take place in. So I'd replace Jenny Sparks completely with Jenny Quantum and also Manchester Black, who could bring a very similar sort of personality and maybe even a little bit more recognizability to the team. And then I'd just completely ignore Swift because she's just too similar to Hawkgirl, and I would not put Hawkgirl on this team because she just does not fit the team. She's way more heroic. I could also see them introducing other Wildstorm characters like Grifter, Zealot, Jackson King, and Christine Trelane, not as members of the Authority, but either as supporting characters or other heroes appearing in minor roles. And furthermore, seeing as the Authority is a sequel, spin-off, / follow-up to Superman, I'm sure Superman and maybe other Superman characters will appear, and I could see it being Clark Kent, Lois Lane, and the Daily Planet staff all appearing, covering news around the Authority, with Clark also suiting up as Superman. Finally are the villains of this movie, which is nearly impossible to predict. Hell, we don't even know if the movie will be a typical superhero movie. Maybe Superman will be the main antagonist, and there won't actually be a villain. If there is, then they could honestly just use any villain from the DC universe who isn't really primarily a villain of a specific hero, but that would be impossible to predict, so I'm just going to be going off of the primary source material, The Authority Volume 1, from which the likes of Kazan Gamora, the Renegade Doctor, and Jacob Krigstein and the Americans are the most likely, with, I think, Kazan Gamora being the most likely, potentially him and his son, 2 different characters, appearing in this movie. And so the Authority cast would look like this. Lanterns is a weird case because while we could potentially just fill the show up with the entire Green Lantern Corps, the show is based on Earth, so I don't think many of the alien Green Lanterns will appear. The human Green Lanterns, however, have all been confirmed: Hal Jordan, John Stewart, and Guy Gardner. That being said, I do think a few of the major Green Lantern Corps members like Sinestro, Kilowog, and Ganthet will appear in some capacity, likely a very small role, while the show will focus more so on every Earth-based relationship the Lanterns have, whether that be love interest, supporting character, or villain. I think a few of the family members, specifically Hal and John's family members, could appear. For Hal, it's Jack, Jim, and Susan Jordan, amongst others, and for John, it's Shirley Stewart, his mother, and then some of their other supporting cast members like Carol Ferris, Thomas Kalmaku, and Kari Limbo could appear. And this show will likely explore some of the Earth-based Green Lantern villains, maybe before a movie franchise explores the space-based villains. This can include the likes of Dr. Polaris, Hector Hammond, Black Hand, Goldface, and Sonar, and seeing as this is a TV show, honestly, it's possible for every single one of them to appear. Now, James Gunn did say the Lanterns will involve some sort of mystery that will connect to the chapter's overarching story, but if I'm being honest, there's literally no way to predict what that'll be, so I just won't even try. And finally, the show being set on Earth and being a TV show can allow for the unique opportunity to see many major heroes showing up in an episode or two to team up with the Lanterns. The most obvious and likely ones are Green Arrow, who has a shared comic with Hal at one point, and The Flash, given their frequent team-ups, then Fire and Ice, given Guy's romantic connection to the latter, and then also Vixen and Hawkgirl, given John's romantic connection to them in certain adaptations. Not all of them can appear, that would be insane, but I say the ones that fit the best and seem the most likely are Vixen, who has already been confirmed for this universe, and then Green Arrow, and then also through Green Arrow would be Black Canary, who would potentially make her debut on this show. And so here is the cast of Lanterns. Booster Gold, like Swamp Thing, is a blank slate. We know Booster will appear, it'll show his origin, and that Booster Gold Volume 2 is the source material, but that is it. So Booster's supporting cast, like Skeets for sure, as well as other characters like Daniel Carter, Rose Levin, Michelle Carter, and Rip Hunter, as well as his villains like his father John Carter, aka Supernova, Schiller, Rex Hunter, Mind Racer, the Perforated Man, and the Black Beetle are all possibilities. Black Beetle then brings up another thing, the Blue Beetle of it all. Jaime is confirmed to return, but we don't know where, while Ted Kord exists but hasn't fully appeared yet. Because of their relationship in the comics, and because Black Beetle can be a good villain, this is almost certainly where the Beetles will be making their DCU debut, or at the very least, they will appear. There is actually a Booster Gold villain who might have kind of already appeared in this universe as well, Blackguard in the Suicide Squad, who's actually the very first villain that Booster Gold ever fought. Now, he did die, but Booster Gold is a time traveler, and I think it would be cool to see this character again, using time travel. Volume 2 will be the primary source material, but the volume takes place later on into his career. It's Volume 1 that shows his origin, and will most likely be the inspiration for maybe the early adventures and early episodes, as well as the demeanor of Booster Gold. And so his supporting characters from then will likely appear as well, as he tries to be a famous superhero, his agent Dirk Davis, his assistant Trixie Collins, and a few more employees of Booster Gold International, like Matt Garrison and Jack Sue. Finally, I could also see Maxwell Lord appearing in the show, given that they do have a strong connection through Ted Kord. That's all we could speculate on, so here's the Booster Gold cast. Paradise Lost currently has 0 confirmed characters, but it's pretty safe to assume that Hippolyta will appear as the main character. Every other character who was around before Diana was born is a little bit less safe to assume, but still fairly safe, like Nubia, Antiope, Mala, Philippus, Hesia, Dalma, and Exoristos. I could also see them introducing other sects of Amazons, like those of Bana Migdal, so characters like Hippolyta's sister, Queen Atalanta, as well as the likes of Faruka, Aquila, Anahid, Karna, and Pithnia could all appear. Other characters who could appear include Hippolyta's other sister, Astarte, all of the other gods of Olympus like Ares, Zeus, Hera, Hercules, Hades, etc., which would make it so that there aren't just female characters on this show, there are also male characters. And the one character who's been confirmed for this universe who will almost certainly appear is Circe. Basically, every Wonder Woman character who was alive before she was born, and then also probably Wonder Woman herself, as I could see the show being a one-season show that will end with Diana's birth. So technically, she'd appear as a baby in the end. So that in mind, this is what the cast of Paradise Lost would look like. After The Brave and the Bold, or maybe even before depending on the release schedule, introduces some of the fantastical Batman villains, Arkham could explore the more grounded and crazier Batman villains who belong in Arkham Asylum. As of now, no characters are confirmed, but there are 4 categories of characters that will most likely and certainly appear. First are the Arkham staff, with characters like Jeremiah Arkham, Aaron Cash, Frank Bowles, Quincy Sharp, Penelope Young, and Hugo Strange, with inspiration taken from the Arkham games. A few of those characters actually debuted in the Arkham games and should certainly be brought over here. Then there are the Arkham inmates, which I'd limit to the powerless and insane villains of the Batman Rogues Gallery, seeing as this is an asylum and seeing as this will be live action, and so characters who require CGI would be difficult to do, and in my opinion, those villains just don't belong in Arkham Asylum anyway. So Joker, Riddler, Two-Face, Scarecrow, Hush, Mad Hatter, Ventriloquist, Zsasz, Calendar Man, Killer Moth, Firefly, and Professor Pig. Any other powerless villain I didn't mention, I just didn't think belongs in an asylum because they aren't insane, or maybe they could be introduced later, maybe they just haven't debuted yet in this universe. The only exception is Harley Quinn, who is insane, but she isn't included because of the loose canon of the Suicide Squad. She, at this point, should be a free woman. Arkham likely works closely with the GCPD as well, and so Category 3 includes James Gordon, Renee Montoya, and Harvey Bullock. And finally, a few members of the Bat family should appear as well, even if it is in a smaller role, which, if this does release before The Brave and the Bold, then for a few of them, it could be their debut in the DCU. With that in mind, here are the characters of Arkham. And finally, we arrive at Teen Titans, a movie we know nothing about in terms of the characters or what version of the team is being adapted. When the movie was first announced, I made a video going over what I think the lineup of the Teen Titans should be. If you want to know why I chose this specific lineup and you haven't seen the video, then link will be in the cards. But basically, the lineup is Damian Wayne, aka Robin, Bart Allen, aka Kid Flash, Cassandra Sandsmark, aka Wonder Girl, and then Cyborg, Raven, and Beast Boy. And it's that lineup that I'm going to be basing the cast here off of. So from there, certain affiliated characters could appear like Silas Stone, Trigon, Angela Roth, Marie, and Mark Logan, Batman, Nightwing, and Wonder Woman. The Flash isn't included because I'd like for him to be Wally West in this universe, and then also for Bart to debut as a Teen Titans character like he did in the New 52. Someone clearly missing from the lineup is Starfire, who I didn't include because I wanted the team to be purely teenagers, and I think Starfire needs to be the same age as Nightwing, who would have to already be an adult in this universe. However, she wouldn't be a member, but I think she should appear, maybe as an already established hero and someone who was close to Nightwing in this world. As for the villains, I mentioned Trigon, but I think I'd set him up for a sequel. He would appear, but not as the villain. Deathstroke would also be used in a sequel, leaving the villains of this movie to be Simon and the Fearsome Five. Why? Well, because they're the biggest Titans villains to not be used as the villains of a season of Titans, and so this is what the Teen Titans cast would look like. And that is it for this video. Thanks for watching, and goodbye.